Let me give you a number. 66%. That is the percentage increase in college enrollment among black women over the past 20 years. Black women are now the most educated demographic in the entire United States of America. More college degrees than white men, more graduate degrees than white women, more professional certifications than any other group. And yet, black women earn on average 64 cents for every dollar a white man makes. Not 64 cents compared to someone equally educated. Not 64 cents compared to someone with the same job title. 64 cents compared to a white man who statistically may not even have a college degree. So let me ask you a question, and I want you to really sit with this. If education is the great equalizer, if stay in school is the answer, then why, after all those years, all those loans, all that sacrifice, all those late nights studying, why is the gap still there? Why does it keep growing? Because here's what nobody told you when you were walking across that stage to get your diploma. The game was never about your education. It was always about ownership. And today I'm going to show you exactly what that means and what you can do about it. Right now, starting today, stay with me. Because what I'm about to share could change the trajectory of your family for generations. Now, I want to be very clear about something before we go any further. This is not a video about victimhood. I don't do victimhood. Victimhood is comfortable, and comfort is the enemy of progress. So if you came here looking for someone to co-sign your frustration and leave you exactly where you are, this is not that video. What I'm going to give you today is diagnosis and prescription, because you cannot fix a problem you haven't correctly identified. So let's talk about the credential trap. The credential trap is what happens when you are taught to solve a financial problem with an educational solution. You're told by your family, by your teachers, by your community, by society, that if you just get more education, the doors will open. If you just get the degree, you'll be taken seriously. If you just get the certification, they'll have to pay you what you're worth. And so you do it. You get the degree. Then you get the master's. Then you get the certification. And the doors do open, just not as wide as they opened for someone else. Here is the data, and I want you to hear this clearly. A black woman with a bachelor's degree earns less on average than a white man with only a high school diploma. Let that sit for a second. You spent 4 to 6 years and tens of thousands of dollars in student loan debt to earn less than someone who took a different path entirely. Now, is this a reason to stop pursuing education? Absolutely not. Education has value. But we need to be honest about what kind of value it has and what it cannot do on its own. A degree is a credential. And credentials in the workforce are essentially permission slips. They say, this person has been trained to perform a specific function inside someone else's system. And that's the problem right there. The whole credential system was not designed to make you wealthy. It was designed to make you employable. Those are two very, very different things. Employed means someone else controls how much you make, when you make it, and whether you keep making it at all. Wealthy means you have assets working for you, income streams you built, and the freedom to make decisions about your own life. You cannot credential your way to wealth. You have to own your way there. Now let me tell you the 3 reasons why this gap exists, because understanding the root cause is the first step to changing your outcome. Root cause number 1, you were trained to work for wealth, not build it. Every institution that touched your life, from kindergarten through college, was designed with one goal in mind. And that goal was not to make you financially free. That goal was to make you a productive participant in an economic system that needs workers more than it needs owners. Think about what you were taught in school. You were taught how to follow instructions, how to complete assignments, how to meet deadlines, how to show up on time, how to perform under evaluation. These are all excellent skills for an employee. But were you ever taught how to read a financial statement? Were you ever taught how to own equity? Were you ever taught the difference between an asset and a liability? Were you ever taught how to build a business, how to invest in real estate, how to create a product and bring it to market? Of course not, because the system doesn't need more owners. It needs more workers. And the better you are at school, the better you are at being a worker. That's not an insult. That is just an honest assessment of the design. Now, black women in particular have internalized this message more deeply than almost any other group. Because for generations, getting an education was an act of defiance. It was a statement of survival. It was the only door that was legally left open. And so education became not just a strategy, it became an identity. It became a source of pride. And rightfully so. But here's the dangerous thing about making education your identity. When education fails to deliver the return you were promised, you don't question the strategy. You double down on it. You get another degree. You get another certification. You do everything the system told you to do, and you keep waiting for a system that was never designed to pay you fairly to suddenly start doing so. The first shift you have to make is this: stop thinking like an employee and start thinking like an owner. Root cause number 2, black women pay a double tax on race and on gender. Now the wage gap is real. The data on this is not in dispute. But what a lot of the conversation misses is that black women don't just face a gender wage gap and a racial wage gap separately. They face the compounding intersection of both at the same time. White women earn about 83 cents to the dollar of a white man. That's a gap. But black women earn 64 cents to that same dollar. That's a canyon. And here's the part that doesn't get talked about enough: the negotiation gap. Research shows that black women are significantly less likely to negotiate their starting salaries than their white counterparts, particularly white men. And this is not because black women are less confident or less capable. It is because black women have been systematically conditioned, both by American culture at large and sometimes by their own communities, to be grateful, to not rock the boat, to be appreciative of the opportunity. Don't ask for too much. You're lucky to even be here. Don't make them uncomfortable. And so the gap gets locked in at the very first salary offer, and then it compounds. Every raise, every promotion, every new job is based on that lower baseline. Over a 40-year career, that negotiation hesitation can cost a black woman hundreds of thousands of dollars. Beyond that, there is the reality of corporate culture. Most corporate structures in America were not designed with black women in mind. The unwritten rules, how to navigate office politics, which relationships to build, what leadership looks like, how to advocate for yourself without being penalized for it. These are things that some people absorb growing up through family connections, through network exposure, through proximity to power. And black women have historically had less access to those informal pipelines. So you show up to a game where the rules aren't written down, the referees aren't neutral, and you still have to win. That is an extraordinary burden. And it is real. I acknowledge that completely. But here's what I also know. The most powerful response to a rigged game is not to keep playing it harder. The most powerful response is to build your own game. Root cause number 3, generational wealth was deliberately disrupted. I want to spend just a moment here, not to dwell in the pain of the past, but because understanding history is essential to understanding the present. In 1921, Greenwood District in Tulsa, Oklahoma, what history calls Black Wall Street, was a thriving community of black-owned businesses, black-owned banks, black-owned hospitals, and law firms and schools. It was proof, living, breathing proof, that black Americans could build wealth, could build institutions, could build legacy. It was burned to the ground. That is not a metaphor. It was literally bombed and burned by a racist mob with the complicity of local government over the course of a single day. And the wealth that was destroyed was never compensated. That's just one example. Add to it the Federal Housing Administration's redlining policies that systematically denied black families access to home ownership, the primary wealth-building vehicle for the American middle class, throughout the mid-20th century. Add to it the GI Bill after World War II, which provided white veterans with college tuition, low-interest home loans, and business startup funds, while black veterans were systematically excluded from those same benefits. These were not accidents. They were policies. And policies have generational consequences. When you start from zero, not once, but multiple times, because every time your community built something, it was taken, the starting line is different. And no amount of education changes where the starting line is. But here's the thing I want you to hear, because this is where the power is. Knowing this is not a reason to give up. It is a reason to be strategic. It is a reason to be intentional. It is a reason to build differently, not to get a job and hope for the best, but to build assets, build businesses, build wealth, and to protect it and pass it on. Because the only way to truly close a generational gap is to build generational wealth. Now I want to talk about mindset, because everything I've shared with you so far is context. And context matters. But context without transformation is just information. And information without application is just entertainment. So let's talk about the most fundamental shift you need to make if you want a different outcome. There is a difference between income and wealth. Income is what you earn. Wealth is what you own. Income pays your bills today. Wealth takes care of your grandchildren tomorrow. Income is traded for time, your energy, your presence. Wealth works whether you show up or not. Most people in America, regardless of race or gender, are chasing income. They're getting educated so they can earn more income. They're negotiating for better income. They're frustrated when their income doesn't match their education level. But the wealthiest people in this country, the people who actually have freedom, not just a good salary, are not obsessed with income. They're obsessed with ownership. They own businesses. They own real estate. They own equity. They own intellectual property. They own assets that produce income for them without requiring their constant labor. I want to say this directly to every black woman watching this video. Your degree gets you a job. Your skills get you freedom. Your ownership gets you legacy. Read that again. Your degree gets you a job. Your skills, the ability to solve real problems for real people and monetize that ability, your skills get you freedom. And your ownership, equity in businesses, real estate, investments, your ownership gets you legacy. Now, I also want to speak to something that some of you might have felt growing up, and you might still be carrying right now. There is a narrative in some communities, in some churches, in some households, that wanting more is selfish. That making too much money is greedy. That being wealthy is somehow in conflict with being humble or faithful. I need you to let that go. I believe, I know, that you were not placed on this earth with the intelligence, the resilience, the creativity, and the work ethic that you possess just to trade your hours for a paycheck for 40 years and then retire on someone else's terms. That is not the life God designed for you. Wealth is not the enemy of purpose. Wealth is the fuel of purpose. Wealthy people fund schools. Wealthy people build hospitals. Wealthy people create jobs. Wealthy people leave something behind for their children and their children's children. You don't need to apologize for wanting that. You need to pursue it with everything you have. And right now, today, there are black women entrepreneurs who are doing exactly that. They are building seven-figure businesses with no venture capital, no corporate sponsor, no permission from anyone. They're using social media, they're using their expertise, they're building communities, they're creating products and services that serve millions of people. They didn't wait for a seat at the table. They built their own table, and they're inviting other people to sit at it. That is the model. That is the direction. And that is available to you. All right, let's get practical. Because inspiration without strategy is just a feeling. And feelings don't build wealth, action does. Here are 4 things you can start doing differently starting this week. Step 1, monetize what you already know. Here is something that might surprise you. Whatever you've spent years doing in your corporate job, the skills you use daily, the problems you solve, the expertise you've built, that knowledge has a market value far beyond what your employer is paying you for it. Are you a project manager? Companies will pay you directly as a consultant. Are you in HR? Small businesses need HR expertise and can't afford a full-time department. Are you a financial analyst? There are individuals who need exactly that skill set and will pay you well for it. Are you a nurse or a healthcare professional? Health coaching and medical consulting are booming industries. The question is not whether your knowledge has value. It clearly does. That's why someone is paying you a salary. The question is, who else needs what you know and how do you reach them? Start by writing down the top 3 to 5 skills you use at work. Then ask yourself, who outside of my company would pay for this? That's your starting point for building a side income stream that you control, income that isn't subject to a performance review or a company layoff. Step 2, learn the language of money. Wealthy people speak a language that most of us were never taught. They talk about equity, cash flow, appreciation, depreciation, leverage, compounding interest, return on investment, and tax strategy. These are not complicated concepts, but they feel foreign if you've never been exposed to them. And here's the hard truth. If you don't understand money, money will always be something that controls you rather than something you control. Start with the basics. Read 1 book on personal finance and investing. I recommend starting with The Millionaire Next Door or Rich Dad, Poor Dad or The Wealth Choice by Dennis Kimbro, which was written specifically for the black community and is exceptional. Spend 30 minutes a week learning about investing, about real estate, about starting a business entity. It doesn't take years to get literate. It takes intentionality. And stop saving money in a savings account and calling it financial planning. Saving is not investing. A savings account keeps your money safe and keeps it flat. Investing makes your money work. Put your money where it can grow. Index funds, real estate, your own business. Step 3, build in community, not in isolation. One of the most beautiful things about black women is the depth of your relational capacity. You show up for everyone. You support your family, your friends, your colleagues, your church community. You are the backbone of so many people's lives. But here's what I notice. So much of that energy goes outward, and very little of it comes back as strategic investment in your own future. I want you to redirect some of that community energy. Find your people. Other black women who are building, who are investing, who are starting businesses, who are talking about money and legacy and generational wealth. Join masterminds. Attend wealth building events. Get around people who are a few steps ahead of where you want to be. Your network is genuinely your net worth. Not because of who you know, but because of what you believe is possible based on who you're surrounded by. When you see women who look like you building real wealth, it stops feeling impossible. It starts feeling like your turn. Step 4, stop negotiating for crumbs. Start building the whole bakery. Look, if you're still in corporate America, please negotiate. Please. Do not leave money on the table. Learn how to anchor high, how to counter, how to ask for equity and signing bonuses, and remote work flexibility. Negotiation is a skill and it is worth learning. Closing the wage gap, one conversation at a time, matters. But I also need you to understand that negotiating your salary is the floor. It is not the ceiling. The ceiling is ownership. The ceiling is building something that generates income whether you're in the office or not. The ceiling is having so many options that no single company's decision can determine your family's financial future. Don't just negotiate for a bigger paycheck. Negotiate for equity. Ask for profit sharing. Ask for stock options. Ask for a stake in what you're building for them. And simultaneously, start building something of your own so that your financial well-being is never entirely in someone else's hands. I want to close with something personal, because I've been talking about statistics and strategy and systems, and all of that is important. But I don't want you to miss the bigger picture. This is not just about your paycheck. This is not just about your career. This is about something much larger than any one person's income. Think about the woman who came before you, your mother, your grandmother, your great-grandmother. Think about what she sacrificed. Think about what she survived. Think about the doors she pushed open so that you could walk through them. She didn't have the opportunities you have. She didn't have the information you have. She didn't have the technology, the platforms, the global marketplace, the access that you have right now. She survived so that you could thrive. And now it's your turn. Your turn to take everything she gave you, that resilience, that faith, that determination, and combine it with strategy, with financial literacy, with ownership and investment, and build something that outlasts you. Because the generation before you survived, your job is to thrive and leave a door open for the generation behind you. I want you to think about your children, or your nieces and nephews, or the young black girls in your community who are watching you right now, even if they don't say it. They are watching how you respond to difficulty. They are watching whether you get bitter or get better. They are watching whether you believe in yourself enough to bet on yourself. What you build today is their inheritance tomorrow. Not just financially, though that matters enormously, but in terms of belief, in terms of what they think is possible for someone who looks like them. You have more power than you know. You have more influence than you realize. And you have access to more opportunity than any generation of black women in the history of this country. The question is not whether the resources are there. The question is, will you decide today to go get them? I believe you will. I believe this is your season. And I believe that the women who watch this video, internalize it, act on it, and share it with others, those women are going to look back 5 years from now and recognize this as a turning point. Not because of what I said, but because of what they decided to do with it. You didn't get educated to be underpaid. You got educated to know better, and now it's time to do better. If this video spoke to you, share it with a black woman you love. Subscribe to Before You Die, and drop in the comments. What's one thing you're going to do differently starting today? I'll see you in the next one.